Let's get into the Rotoworld player news. As always, you can find all your player news on NBCSports.com. And we have to start once again with Jonathan Taylor. Stephen Holder, who covers the team for ESPN, believes the Dolphins are a team to watch in Jonathan Taylor's current contract dispute with the Colts. There's also been some rumblings out there, Jay. The Rams, the Bears. Feels like with this type of talent, it's not surprising to hear all these teams inquiring, but that doesn't mean we're close necessarily to a trade.
Yeah, I do think that the Dolphins kind of poetically have always made the most sense, just because Kyle Shanahan, mentor of Mike McDaniel, traded all those picks for Christian McCaffrey. Now Mike McDaniel can follow in his footsteps and trade for an elite superstar running back. The Eagles buzz has never really made that much sense to me. I think that they're such an analytical organization, and the gap between Taylor and Swift and Penny, I'm not sure that's worth a first-round pick. But I mean, honestly, hopefully he gets moved before the season, because I think it's going to be ugly if he stays on Indianapolis.
The Bears and Rams don't make sense on paper, just because those are teams that are rebuilding a little bit. Maybe the Bears, I mean, they may feel like they have, but it feels like they have 8 billion running backs already between Herbert and Foreman and Roschon Johnson, obviously, and my guy Travis Homer.
Yeah, good man.
Right. You know, and like they want a first-round pick. So, you know, what will the Rams trade them? Like a 2037 first-rounder or something like that, right?
You'd have to go pretty far down the road.
Right. It's a while. That was something that came back to me on Twitter. That's not my joke. That's somebody else's. But the fact is that Miami makes the most sense. And by the way, if he goes to Miami, again, it's all speculation until something happens. But I think, to me, the biggest takeaway here is that whereas literally a day ago we were joking about, Jonathan Taylor's been given permission to seek a trade, and I've been given permission to hit on Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, neither of these things are going to come true, right? Maybe I should hit up Michelle Pfeiffer. Maybe I should call her, because it sounds like there's a chance that Jonathan Taylor might move on to a better situation.
She could win the sweepstakes, too. There's not a non-zero chance.
There you go.
Right, for Michelle Pfeiffer.
That would be
to be our front row studio.
Be
take a picture with the crew.
Oh, yeah.
That would be something.
I'll show you
that would really be something.
I'll show you the sights here in beautiful Stamford, Connecticut.
Boy, oh boy.
Boy, oh boy.
All right.
I think if that actually happened, I think my wife would literally be like, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
that's fair. That's
got
play
permission.
on.
Yeah,
Play on.
Yeah, exactly.
In other player news, Ian Rappaport reports Jackson Smith-Njigba, dealing with, of course, the wrist injury, is a long shot for Week 1 against the Rams. Barry, I'll ask you like this. Obviously, this is going to boost targets for Tyler Lockett, we think, and maybe DK Metcalf, although he's going to get his anyway. But is there a scenario now where you look at JSN and maybe you buy the dip a little bit if his ADP starts to drop? Because he's not going to miss a ton of time of this season. But we know Week 1 injuries scare away fantasy drafters.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, he's going to miss a little bit of time in preseason. There was already some concern on him coming into the season because, you've got Lockett and you've got Metcalf, and you know Pete Carroll always loves to run the ball. And then he starts wowing in camp, and so his ADP starts to rise. And so, yes, this injury seems somewhat minor. May now bring his ADP back to normal and back to earth. And again, we saw this last year. We saw this with Christian Watson. We saw this with Garrett Wilson. We saw it with a lot. We've seen rookie wide receivers come onto the scene, especially over the second half of a season. And JSN is one of those guys who's just phenomenally talented, and has a good quarterback, and still a fairly narrow target tree. I know you've got Metcalf and Lockett, but like, who else is on that team that's taking targets away? Like, I'm not worried about Fant or Disley. I'm not worried about D. Eskridge.
Suspended 6 games.
Thank you, exactly. So I do think, JSN actually represents a really great buying opportunity in drafts as his ADP starts to drop.
Yeah, I think the thing that people often forget with Seattle too is they actually passed the ball at an above average rate last year. You think of Pete Carroll, you think of a running offense, you think run, pass. Last year with Geno, they did actually throw a lot, and even guys like Marquise Goodwin were getting some production at the end of the season. So I think the JSN should be able to come back and produce immediately upon return. And also, like, it's a wrist injury, like it's not a knee or something that
or
should
an ankle or something like that.
Linger throughout the whole season, like Gabe Davis with his ankle sprain that lasted the whole year basically. So I think that he should be right.
He probably doesn't even need a wrist to catch, like just right here, catch it right, sort of right here,
the Barry
into
technique.
the numbers. Yeah, the Barry technique, exactly. Just right into the numbers, boom, catch it up. So anyway, I wouldn't count on him early in the season, but I do like him as somebody to target later in drafts for the second half of the year.
Our last bit of player news, a receiver that will no longer be catching passes in the NFL. Corey Davis retires after 6 seasons. I think a bit of a surprise across the NFL landscape. He's the all-time D1 leader in receiving yards coming out of college. Obviously a top 5 pick of the Titans. Signed to a pretty big money contract with the Jets. A player that a lot of people thought the Jets were going to move on from in the offseason, and then they decided not to, was due $10.5 million, and he ends up walking away. So I think I'll say like this. Corey Davis has missed a lot of time this summer. He's been mulling over this decision. I think a lot of people are reacting, and they're rightfully surprised. In terms of targets in the Jets offense, I don't know how much this really moves the needle. Maybe it opens up some more for Allen Lazard, a little bit more for McCole Hardman. Garrett Wilson's still going to get a ton of targets. They're going to run the ball with the 2 running backs. They're going to throw to the tight ends. I don't think the fantasy impact here, Barry, is substantial.
No, I don't think it is either, honestly. When this came up in the meeting, which I actually attended today, by the way, let's hear it from me on there. I was just like, really? We're talking Corey Davis? All right. Yeah, it's more of a like, hey, good for you.
Yep.
Wish you well. Definitely had some great moments in the NFL when he was out there, especially in Tennessee against the Patriots, I remember. Right. And, but yeah, not a huge fantasy impact. So, well wishes to Corey Davis on a successful career and, awesome rest of his life.
Yeah. I think, look, Allen Lazard, I think this matters a ton for him, but he's going as wide receiver 51. I don't know. I think you wouldn't be shocked if Allen Lazard ends up as like wide receiver 33 or something at the end of all this.
It's going to come down to the scoring, right?
Yep.
I mean, does he look for Lazard when they get in close? So certainly there's a lot of guys that you could say like, that's a worthwhile late-round flyer at wide receiver, and Lazard is on a long list of guys like that.
Yep.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.